Okay, so today we're going to be looking at something a little bit different, and that is some receivers. Now, if you notice these are Sony, this is a Sony and an Onkyo receiver. They look rather similar, but they're almost a 20-year difference apart. This Sony is from 1988, and this Onkyo is from 2007, but very, very close to 2008, so they're very close, and our phone is ringing, so sorry about that little interruption there. I'm gonna, show the difference between these two receivers. By the way, the Sony is older and smaller, but it actually sounds better with more bass, but I'm actually going to disassemble both of these and show the differences in the amps and everything, and the differences of how they did things within like a 20-year difference. Okay, so we're starting off with our good old Sony, and you can see there are two screws on the side, and a risk of electrical shock logo thing, but I know that, I know what parts can shock me, so there'll be screws on the other side too. There's always one on the back. Okay, so now we're gonna get into this now 30-year-old receiver. And you can see pretty dusty in there. But I'm actually gonna turn it the other way because it's more interesting. So what we've got here is two ridiculously sized capacitors right there. Nikon, never heard of that brand. 6,800 microfarads, pretty good rating. A motorized volume control, because this probably came with a remote. Don't have the remote. A very, very large transformer. And actual different circuit boards for the speakers A and B. Another transformer for some reason. And we've got an STK amplifier. Now, those things weren't very well known. Well, I guess they were well known, but I guess they were well known for breaking, so they sound good, but they break easily kind of thing, so pretty much instead of the plug-in connectors for all the wires are just twisted on the old-fashioned way, and we've got some rather thick ribbon cables right there. Again, all these white boards just look really old. They're actually labeled volume, which is quite surprising. Now, one thing I like about these old receivers is you'll notice it says Sony on it. These are Sony parts, not some RU or other circuit board makers. They're actually made by Sony. It's how they did it in the old days. Except for it has a Sanyo amp, but this is an old-fashioned good receiver, and that's why I like it. So that's pretty much all for the Sony. Okay, so even though it's newer, this Onkyo is much larger, so I'm assuming it's going to have much bigger parts in it. And here we go, removing all the screws. These screws now are easier to remove because they're smaller, and so we got cool features on the back like Sirius and XM and some HDMIs. A lot of digital stuff. And finally, for the two screws on the opposite side, and then, just like our old Sony, the top just slides off like that. Okay, so we can see, let me just zoom in. We've got much larger components and much more cables inside of this thing. Wow, an even bigger transformer back there. Giant venting heat sink. And what really fascinates me about this is that, see all those transistors back there? This is a surround receiver, so what we are seeing here is actually all of the amplifiers in one, instead of just one big amplifier for everything. So, and by the way, so that's kind of it's kind of a newer way of doing things. And you can see, instead of all the wires being twisted on and everything, they have plastic plugs and soldering connections on all their things. So that is the difference between an old receiver and a new receiver. Also the difference between a stereo receiver and a surround receiver. One thing that really fascinates me about this is that this front metal part actually comes off, but it's kind of off topic. Anyway, that's looking at the inside of two receivers, a Sony and an Onkyo, 20 years apart. Thanks for watching. Please like, please subscribe, and before I say bye, one more thing. The capacitors are even bigger in this newer receiver, which kind of surprised me. Where is the rating on those things? Oh, 10,000 microfarads. That's much more rating on these big capacitors than the old Sonys, so this is meant to be a higher-end receiver for hi-fi listening. The old one was more for bass. This one's more for, I guess you could say, range and hi-fi listening, so that's the difference between two similar-looking, different receivers. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and bye.